here. So I want to thank you for joining us for Renovation Training Thursday. So just to let you know, today we are going to be going over the renovation products. That's going to cover the 203K, standard and limited. It's also going to cover the home style toward the end of the presentation here. So I'll do the first half on 203K, the second half will be on home style. Two little housekeeping notes here. Number one, if your email address is not already in your GoToMeeting profile, please make sure that you send that to me in a private message. There are several items that are going to go out after this call, including tools, docs, guides, and copies of the presentation itself. So if you don't already have your email address listed there or you're not sure, please make sure that you send that to me in a message. The second item here is that you'll see that today everybody is muted. Usually this is kept down in the background noise here, but if you do have any questions that come up during the presentation, please feel free to utilize the chat box. You'll find that in your GoToMeeting window. I will stop periodically and address any questions as they do come up. So first of all, my name is Adam Trzebinski. I work with the construction resource team here with First Guarantee. My department deals with all of the construction renovation questions, basically. We are here to operate as the backstop or safety net to those loans. So like I said, today we're going to start off with the 203K standard and limited. So we're going to cover what the program is, the overall benefit, eligible properties and borrowers, some of the differences between standard and limited, improvements allowed under standard and limited, appraisal requirements, the loan structuring. We'll finish up with the purchase contracts and how the consultant and contractor play within these loans. Now, if you are also not familiar with it, or you have not heard these terms yet before, limited and standard have replaced streamline and with the advent of FHA 4000.1. The program has changed. Now, a lot of the requirements and such are still going to be the same, but just the terminology has changed. Streamline has become limited. Standard has become, or full has become the standard to it. So what is this with It is really it's a loan program designed to allow you to either do a purchase or refinance, and basically include the rehab costs within the loan itself. Now, this 50K is one actually backed by FHA, so this is our version. There are some minimums and maximums to the different programs, so we're going to touch on those when we actually go through the individual standard and limited variations. So, from a sales standpoint, on the purchase side of things, of course, this would be if you're purchasing the home and then intend to do the renovations very shortly before moving in. Refinance side of things, of course, is going to be improving a home that you currently live in. So on the purchase side, these are great for the REO properties, for short sales, really anything that has sort of a need of a little attention. So it could be some deferred maintenance, it could be a completely dilapidated house, but for the ones that have had a little rundown, a little spruced up. So also bringing up the older homes, current codes and standards. Okay, now obviously if you have a home built in 1975, it is not going to be built up to the same codes that we're going to use today. So again, another great use for the 203K. And then ultimately, from a borrower standpoint, it's going to allow the borrower to actually shop the area as opposed to shopping the home. So if you happen to be in an area that you really, really like, you don't really want to leave that area, then you might be able to find a home that's close to perfect, and then actually make it perfect the rest of the way. So you're not restricted to only finding the exact home that you're looking for. You could find one that's close and get it there. So that's on the purchase side of things. Then we have the refinance side. So it's going to give you an opportunity to improve the home that you live in instead of moving. So if you like the area, you don't want to leave, you just want to improve your situation. Modernizing kitchens and bathrooms. Again, very similar to the codes. If you have a home built in 1980, your bathroom kitchen is not going to be up to the same standard you're going to see today. Today we see pretty much standard for two cabinets. We see more solid-state countertops. We see more hardwoods and tile in kitchens. You're not going to see that in the older ones. So that's another good use for the product, is really to bring up some of the older kitchens and bathrooms. And then, of course, the product can also be used to do some pretty major additions, too. So, this can include things like putting an extension on the back of the house, putting a whole other store on the house. So those are all things that are fine under 203K. So what properties are eligible for this? First of all, we do allow multi-unit properties. Now, keep in mind, though, this is an owner-occupied primary residence product only. Okay, so when you do have a multi-unit situation, again, it's perfectly fine, but one of them still has to be the owner-occupied primary residence. Okay, so if you've got a 4-unit building, you can rent out the other 3. We can't count the rental income, but you still have to live in one unit. Okay, so if you live in one, you can rent the other 3. It's fine. But it's not designed for investors. So you still have to have an occupied primary. Condos, of course, interior only on these. These do have to be FHA approved. Townhomes or attached singles or whatever you call in your particular area. And then, of course, single-family homes are fine as well. So those are the properties you're able to actually do. So which ones don't we get into? Okay, so mixed use. We don't really deal with mixed use very much. Now, we do look at these on an exception basis. They do have some percentages that have to meet in terms of what's used for residential versus commercial. But as a standard, we don't really do these very often. So if you do happen to have a mixed-use property you need us to take a look at, we have to do that on an exception basis. Like we already said, this is not really designed for investors to use. This is going to be an owner-occupied product, so no investment properties. This also can't be used to finish new construction. Okay, so in order to use the 203K standard or limited, you have to have had a CO issued at some point. So you need to have had your certificate of occupancy. If you have a home that is about halfway under construction and they need financing to finish that home, we do have a product that meets that need, and that is the home style. But 203K cannot be used to finish a home under construction. Okay, that's kind of an important difference between the two. And it allows for condos that are not FHA approved, okay, can't get those involved. And we do allow for manufactured homes on this product. However, they do have to be double wide or larger. We can't have single wide mobile homes for renovation. So that's kind of a high-level overview of some of the ineligible properties. Now, you know, not everything's going to fit into the cookie-cutter definition of some of these. So if you ever have a question about whether something would be eligible under the program, you can always contact us and we can find out for you. So those are the eligible and ineligible properties. Let's talk about the borrowers. So number one, and I think I've said this only 3 or 4 times by now, the owner has to occupy the property as the primary residence. Okay, that is a hardline requirement for 203K. It can never be used as an investment product. They do have to give assistance. Non-permanent alien is fine. Everybody has to have a Social Security card or Social Security number. Now, this is not designed as a low-income program or anything, so there is no max income limit to this. So not a whole lot of restrictions on it in terms of what an eligible borrower is. Now, with this being an FHA product, you are able to use a non-occupying co-borrower. Now, you're going to follow the regular FHA guidelines when it comes to that. It's not always going to be the most beneficial thing in the world, but we do allow the use of a non-occupying co-borrower on this product. So, what are some of the differences between the limited and standard 203Ks? Okay, one of the biggest differences you're going to run into is the inclusion of structural items, so structural repairs. And occasionally this can fall into a little bit of a gray area. And you've got some that stand out very easily. You're putting an addition in the home, you're putting another store in the home. Those are, of course, going to be structural repairs. But what if you're taking out an interior wall? Well, you got to find out if it's load-bearing or non-load-bearing, because that makes the difference. Non-load-bearing wall becomes a non-structural repair. Load-bearing is a structural repair. So sometimes you're going to find some things that fall into that little gray area. And again, that's what we can help you with. If you're having trouble trying to decide if something's going to qualify for the program, you can always check with us and say, hey, this is the repair we're thinking of doing. Where would this have to go? Now, when it comes to minimums and maximums on this product, okay, on the limited, okay, again, this is formally the streamline, you're not going to have a minimum repair guideline, but you are going to have a max of $35,000. Now, please keep in mind that $35,000 must encompass everything. This is not just your renovation hard costs. This is your total cost of alterations and repairs. So this is your hard costs, but it's also your contingency. It's also your title update, your draw fees, permits, architect fees, any of those types of charges. You're all going to find those in the maximum mortgage worksheet. So any of those charges would have to fall under the $30,000 mark. Okay, so by the time you add everything together, you have to have it under that. There's also not a need to have a consultant. Okay, now consultants are always required on the standard 203K, never required on the limited, but they are of course optional. We'll talk about that here in a minute. On the standard 203K, again, this is where your structural repairs are going to go to live. But in terms of the minimums and maximums, this one is going to have a minimum. Okay, so this one does have a minimum amount of repairs, $5,000. However, there is no max. Okay, your max is going to be whatever your FHA loan limit is for your particular area. But other than that, there is no cap. And again, this one does require the use of a consultant. These are the FHA HUD-proof consultants that you can find on the website. So we did have a question come in. On a limited, can the borrower come to closing with any dollar difference? It doesn't quite work that way. Unfortunately, when you're looking at the total cost of alterations, repairs, the money that you're putting into it actually doesn't affect that number. Actually, let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Let me see if I can pull the 203K mortgage sheet here. Bear with me, guys. This is a little impromptu thing. Whoops. Okay. So basically, it's going to be this number right here. Okay, your total rehabilitation cost. Any additional money that the borrower puts into it is going to have no effect on this section. So even if the borrower decided to put 98% down, that particular section could never exceed the 35,000 or whatever it is. If it does, if you do actually exceed the 35,000, you're going to have to go limited to standard. There's no way to do a limited with a number in that box. Actually it's here on the max mortgage sheet. B10 on the max mortgage worksheet, which is the total alterations and repairs, the subtotal of that. Okay, that's what's got to fall under that 35K mark. So unfortunately, on the 203K limited and the home style, which both has sort of a similar type of cap, you're not able to just pay down the difference. Unfortunately, that's not how that works. It does have to be done as the total project value. So hopefully that clears that up for you a little bit better. Sorry, I'm going to put myself back together. Alrighty. So those are some of the differences between the limited K and the standard K. Jumping into the next screen here, I am by no means going to sit here and read this to you line by line because I have more respect for your time than that. But what this is really just showing you some of the things that you can do with a limited. Don't think just because this is called a limited 203K that it really can't do much. You could use this to finish a basement. You could use this to completely gut and redo your HVAC system. Large projects by anybody's definition. So you can use it for that kind of stuff. But you can also use it for things like paint, carpet, appliances, very detail-oriented items. So the streamlined or the limited, you're able to get away with quite a bit. You just have to worry about the structural repairs. Okay, so that's where the standard 203K is going to come into play. So there really isn't anything that the limited 203K can do that the standard can't. Okay, the standard, basically, if you want to think of it this way, is going to be a limited 203K plus structural repairs. And now we also remove that 35,000 cap. So that's the standard 203K. Again, you can use this for very large things. You can use this to do an addition to the home, put on a whole other story, put on a massive deck patio, something like that. But you can also boil it down and use it for just the detail-oriented items. And then Toby had a question, is a pool considered structural? A pool is not considered structural. However, it is considered a luxury item. So that jumps us right into our next slide, so good timing there. What is actually not allowed on the 203K? Well, luxury items is one of the big ones. So this is your hot tubs, tennis courts, gazebos, barbecue pits, etc. This also includes the swimming pools. So anytime that you have somebody that needs to put in a pool, you're going to need to look at the home style product. If you've got somebody that just needs to fix a pool, that is possible under the 203K. You are allowed to use up to $1,500 for the repair of a pool. Not the installation, just the repair. So that is also available only on the standard 203K. That is not an option on the limited. So unfortunately, no, you cannot use 203K to install a pool. You can certainly use home style for that, but they do give you a little bit of an allowance to fix it. Also, any alterations to support commercial use. So if you do have a mixed unit that you send in, sorry, not mixed unit, multi-unit that you've sent in for us to take a look at, we're not allowed to do anything on the commercial side. Okay, so if you've got that mixed use property that we're looking at doing an exception on, even if we do the exception, nothing can be done on the commercial side of the property. And then any landscaping that does not add value to the property. Okay, so what are we talking about there? Well, if you put in a large patio with nice bushes, shrubs, and trees, landscape lighting, so on and so forth, that all might be landscaping that adds value to the property. Now, throwing 2 trees out in the middle of the yard, not so much. So that's what we're looking at when we're talking about landscaping that does not add value to the property. Now also, with the advent of FHA 4000.1, this has also changed a little bit. We have now a requirement, if you're going to be doing a deck or patio with a 203K program, that you need to get dollar for dollar value out of that deck or patio. So if you're putting in a $15,000 patio, your value has to increase by $15,000. That is a fairly new requirement that just came out again with 4000.1, but that is a little bit of a difference if you've done this before. So when you actually go to order the appraisal for these, you're going to order them as an FHA 203K appraisal. Okay, so how do you do this? This is a combination of the scope of work or the bids from the contractors. That gets forwarded over to the appraisal company with a copy of the contracts. They would then perform the subject to a future value appraisal. So they take the plans and specs that you sent over to them. Sorry about that, guys. You take the plans and specs that you got. They get sent over to them, copy the contract, so that way they can combine that with the existing value of the land to come up with the future value of the home. So if you are not familiar with construction and renovation lending, this is referred to as a subject to appraisal, as complete value, future value, plans and specs, all mean the same thing. They're all going to be an appraisal done on proposed repair construction. So next up, on the purchase side of things, this is fairly important because we really only need the after improved value on these. Okay, so we do not need to have the as-is value, but please keep in mind, if the appraiser gives the as-is value as well as the after complete value, we must use the as-is value. Okay, we have no choice. Sometimes this can really bite you, because I have seen it where people bought properties for $60,000, whatever it happens to be, but it's only worth $45,000 now. So that those types of things can come into play here. So we only need the after improved value on purchases. Leave the as-is value off. Now on the refinance side of things, we do need to make sure we have both. We've got the as-is and the after improved or subject to. So again, purchases, those are going to be after improved only. Try actively not to get the as-is value on there. Refi, you're going to do the as-is value. Now, one other note here about the appraisal. Okay, when the appraiser goes to visit the property, if the utilities are not on and able to be tested, the contingency amount goes up to 15%. Let's talk about the contingencies here for a second. So the contingency is in place for 2 reasons, and it is 10% across the board, whether you're 203K or home style. Doesn't matter. However, if you go to the property, the appraiser goes to the property, they're not able to test the utilities, okay, no water, no power, that contingency has to go up to 15%. The reasoning behind this is that when that happens, there's a laundry list of things that can go wrong when you actually turn on the utilities again. You turn on the water, you could end up with a leaky pipe, you could end up blowing up your water heater. You could have a bad outlet fries, you could fry your entire breaker box with the electricity. So, and again, both of those are real world examples, they have happened. So just want to make sure that we have that contingency up at 15% if we need it. Now, if you happen to have any trouble sleeping, we do have the appraisal requirements here for the 203K. You are going to get a copy of this presentation, so you can certainly read this at your will. I'm not going to, again, sit here and read this to you just because that is fairly obnoxious. But if you do have any questions about the appraisal, how long they're good for, how to go about ordering an update, or when you need a second one, this is where you would come. So this will be part of the presentation. I will send that out with us afterwards. So ultimately, on the renovation loans, you're going to have really two obstacles to overcome. One is going to be the max mortgage worksheet. How do you prepare it? The other is how to disclose on the GFE, disclosing costs. Now, given we do know at this point this presentation was never updated for TRID, so we do know the disclosing on the OP on the LE now. So we do still have a guide on the max mortgage worksheet to some extent. The guide for disclosing costs on the GFE is completely changed because of the way that the HUD is set up, the way the LE and CD are set up. So that has changed a little bit, but as soon as we do have the functioning versions that take TRID into account, then we'll go ahead and make sure we get those out to everybody. So talking about the consultant and the contractor a little bit. First of all, we're going to start with the consultant. Now, they are only required on the standard, but they are certainly allowed to be hired for the limited. Okay, the big difference here is that the borrower must pay outside of closing. It cannot include it on the max mortgage worksheet. Okay, so the consultant is not financeable on the limited 203K. It is only included on the full. Okay, so just something to be aware of. Next up, the consultant does have to be HUD approved. Okay, you can find them on the HUD website. There is a link to the official HUD consultants page. Now, their charges and fees are regulated by HUD. So you're not going to have really different charges from different consultants. Okay, so you're not going to really consultant shop. You're just going to want to find the one that's best suited to your particular area. But they do have to be HUD approved. Okay, and they are going to provide some specific documents on each loan. Okay, so they're going to have a few things that they provide specifically in regards to their performance. So again, consultant required on standard 203K, available on limited 203K as long as they're paid outside of closing. Now on the contractor side of things, you're always going to have contractors involved on the 203K. We don't allow for self-build, self-help, anything like that. Okay, so you're always going to have a contractor on the job. They are going to go through a contractor acceptance piece, which is fairly simple, maybe a page and a half of information. We ask for a few references, and then we kind of move on from there. So on a limited 203K, they're going to work directly with the borrower, unless there happens to be a consultant involved. They are going to work with the borrower and the consultant together when you're doing a standard K. So on limited, they can still work with the borrower and by themselves, but they can work with the borrower and the contractor as well. So I know we did a question come in, is foundation repair considered structural? Phil, that one kind of falls into a little bit of a gray area. It depends on what you're doing. So if you're talking about going through and just patching up some holes or, cleaning up the concrete a little bit, waterproofing, that kind of stuff, that would all be perfectly fine. The only thing is you cannot modify the footprint of that foundation at all. Okay, so you have to leave the foundation as is, original shape. It can be, scored, damaged, whatever that happens to be, but you're not able to change the foundation. Okay, so you're going to have to leave that exactly as is. Yeah. Oh, and then we did have the question come in, does the total loan amount not to exceed county limit? That is correct, Toby. So yeah, if your county limit was 217, then as long as your loan amount was under 217, you're fine. So looking at the contractor acceptance fees here for a second, a couple things that we look for. We need to make sure we have their bids, and those should be broken down into labor and material. Okay, this has to do with the initial disbursements on these. So with the limited 203K, we do allow up to 50% to be dispersed, and this is something new in 4000.1. Anytime a builder or contractor is going to get funds at closing, they need to provide a letter of explanation as to why they need those funds. This is not an overlay by FGMC. This is a new rule that came out with 4000.1. So it's not just a matter of, okay, here's my contract price of 35. I'm getting half of that up front, so I'm getting 17.5. No, doesn't work that way. It would be, okay, my contract is 35, I'm paying 12,000 in materials, so I'm able to do up to 12,000, okay, because that's our total material cost. We cannot use the initial disbursement to pay for labor. We cannot use the initial disbursement to prepay for certain items. Okay, we can pre-order certain items. We can pay for any work that has been completed. We don't do the advanced monies as a standard. Okay, now the limited 203K, it is standard that you're allowed to go up to 50. But again, we're just going to need some documentation. On the full 203K side, or the standard 203K side, it's all still going to be required. Okay, so the only difference is with a full, I'm just going to say full, with the standard 203K, there's not a standard initial disbursement up to 50%. There is a standard initial that can go up to 10. But again, we need to have the letter of explanation. That is a new thing with FHA 4000.1. Anytime we have an initial disbursement on a file, we have to have a letter of explanation. License. We understand that not every state requires the contractor to be licensed. That's perfectly fine. Contractorslicense.org is pretty much the best outlet for that, to find out which ones are required, which ones aren't. If they are required, we need to make sure we have a copy of the license. If they are not required, just something maybe a printout from the website is perfectly fine. It just says, hey, this particular contractor is not required to be licensed. But that is definitely the best resource for it, contractorslicense.org. Liability insurance, they do need to have liability that covers the entirety of the project, also needs to cover the entire time frame. Resume and profile, this is something that they're going to fill out with us. Okay, this is part of one of the packages that I'm going to send you, is this full profile sheet for the contractor. And they should provide as many references as possible. I believe there's lines on there for about 3 or 4 of them. Make sure that we get 3 or 4. The more references that we have to call if need be, the less chances this gets hung up because of that. So when they fill that out, please make sure that they're filling it out completely. Identity of interest, we're going to talk about that here in a second. A completed W-9 so that they get paid correctly, so we can issue our 1099s at the end of the year. And then their permit certification. So permit certification lets us know which permits are going to be required for the project. So that's something they sign off on, say, hey, yes, we're going to require this one, this one, this one, here's the number, so on and so forth. So we're going to jump back into the identity of interest thing here for a second. Okay, so all the rehab has to be performed by a qualified and experienced contractor. Again, you can't do this with self-help or self-builds. But what the identity of interest says is that you're also not allowed to use any contractors, or at least there can't be a relationship between the contractor and the borrower that is familial or financial in nature. Okay, so what that means is that mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, none of them can be your contractor. Also, if your borrower happens to be a plumber, okay, then the plumbing company that he works for would not then be able to be the contractor on the job, because that's a financial relationship. So familial or financial relationship, that is not allowed under the FHA 203K. That is where the identity of interest comes into play. Next up, we've got the consultant side of things. Okay, so they're going to provide a work write-up with a complete specification of repairs. Okay, so their job is going to be to combine the bids for the job. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me jump back here on one other thing from this slide. One other thing here. Between the limited 203K and the standard 203K, a limited 203K, you are allowed to use up to 4 subcontractors for the job. You do not have to have a GC, okay? You don't have to have a general contractor. So limited, up to 4, no need for a GC. However, we will need a contractor profile report done on each one of those contractors. Go to the standard. Now you're going to have a general contractor involved. And even if he's the only contractor, he will be a general contractor. Any additional contractors above and beyond will be subordinate through him. Okay, so in those instances where we do have a GC involved, we only need the report done on the GC. Okay, so again, that's going to be your standard 203K that has to have a GC. Limited 203K does not. Now we'll jump over to the consultant side of things. So consultants, again, these are only going to be required on the standard 203Ks. So if you have a situation with multiple contractors, One of the things the consultant is going to do is actually combine all of their bids into a single specification of repairs. So we have a single work write-up that we're all working from, everybody has signed off on. So that is one of their jobs, is to create that document. Now, even if it is only just one contractor, they're still going to prepare this document based on that contractor's bid. They're also going to provide their own identity of interest certification, okay, so with the same kind of rules. Permit certification, they're going to provide that as well, and then a consultant agreement for the invoice consultant agreement and invoice for their charges and fees. A couple other things that they're going to be responsible for. Number one is they're going to do a walk around on the property with the borrower, okay, when they first start this process. So they're going to look for any health and safety issues at this point in time as well. So the borrower's going to point out all the things they want done, but the consultant's also going to be keeping an eye out for health and safety issues or things that don't meet the HUD minimum standards. Okay, any of those types of items that come up have to be addressed in the scope of work. You cannot do all of the optional items without doing the minimum standard stuff as well. So that's one of the jobs of the consultant, is to do that health and safety check walking around the house. So they're going to note that on the form and what everything's going to cost for it. Okay. Their other job is also going to be to do the inspections for the draw requests. So, you know, whereas normally on a like a construction loan or renovation loan, we send an inspector out there and to do the inspections. Well, on a 203K with a consultant involved, they're going to be the ones to handle the inspections. They will take the pictures, they handle the draw requests, and they deal with the draw administrator. So, in addition to what you see on the screen here, there's a couple other items that they're going to be involved in. So we're going to finish up 203K with the purchase contracts. Just a couple notes here. The purchase contract should be contingent upon approval. That is just kind of a little basic one. There should be language in there that allows the inspectors, contractors, and consultants access to the property. This is kind of important because the draw payments can be delayed to the contractor big time if this isn't in there. Okay, so if the consultant asks for a draw request but can't meet with the borrower for 8 days, and that's the only way you can see the property, well, then you've delayed that draw payment by 8 days. A lot of times, these contractors are waiting on that draw payment to start the next phase of the project, especially on the bigger ones. So that language has to be in there. Now, this is not a hardline requirement unless it's written into the contract, but within 7 to 10 days of signing the agreement, the borrower should get a home inspection. Okay, again, this is not a hardline requirement, just a really good idea. It's not a hardline requirement unless it's actually written into the purchase contract. You don't want to start a major renovation without knowing what you're getting into. Okay, if you've bought a house for $200,000, you're hoping to do, you know, $80,000 worth of work. But then you get into the house and realize that you've got mold abatement, termite treatment, lead-based paint, hopefully not all those at once, but you may have all that stuff. So now your $80,000 project has gone up to $110,000. Well, if you'd gotten a home inspection, you'd know that, and you'd be able to say, hey, that needs to be addressed before we ever start. So, again, not a hardline requirement, just a really good idea. If this does happen to be a HUD foreclosed property, we need to make sure we know of any incentives or what portion of closing costs HUD is going to pay, or any incentive programs that they intend to use. Also, keep in mind that if this house was built prior to '78, you're also going to need the lead-based paint report. Okay, that should accompany your initial submission. Finally, the purchase contract should indicate that it is specifically 203K financing that is being obtained. Okay, that's just sort of a little overview about some things that need to be on the purchase contracts. Otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. But those are some specifics to the 203K. So that is going to finish us up on 203K. We're going to jump over to home style now. But by all means, if you have any questions, please go ahead and fire away while I'm switching over here. Okay, nothing jumping in here, so we'll go ahead and keep on rolling with home style. So we're going to go over sort of the same thing here. This is going to move a little bit faster because we've talked a lot about this already. But we're going to talk about the home style program, how it's different, some of the eligible properties and borrowers, core components, the contractor acceptance, and some of the key benefits. A lot of this we're going to jump through a little faster now because a lot of this is the same as the 203K. So I'm going to show you where some of the differences are. Also, at the end of this presentation, at the end of the home style, I have got a fantastic marketing slide for you guys to use with realtors, and I'm going to show you exactly how to present that. So it's a very, very powerful tool with realtors. So first of all, this is, again, a renovation product. Okay, you can use it with either a purchase or a refinance, except this one is backed by Fannie, so this is our conventional product. Okay, to date, VA does not have a renovation product that anybody can seem to find, but right now we've got conventional and FHA renovation. So this is the conventional version. So how is it different? Number one, luxury items are allowed. I know we had this question come up with Toby about the pool. So here's where you can do the pool. The home style can fit that. Okay, pool just has to be typical for the area. Okay, putting a pool in a house in Florida, probably no brainer. Putting a pool in Minot, North Dakota, maybe not. But if it's standard for the area, it should be perfectly fine. Investment products are fine on this one too. So if you've got investors, this is where you want to steer them for their renovation products. There is no limited and standard variation. Okay, there's only one version. There's home style. Done. There's also no upfront MIP. So the 203K has an upfront MIP charge because it's an FHA product. This is conventional. So you're going to follow the regular monthly MI guidelines with, following the regular Fannie standards. Also, the way the top end of these is calculated is a little bit different as well. So here, as opposed to just being your county loan limit, it's going to be 50% of the appraised as complete value. So if the home, when everything is said and done, is going to be worth $500,000, your total project cost could not exceed $250,000, 500 divided by 2. So, and again, this is very much just like the limited K. It's the total alterations and repairs. So it's not just your hard costs. It has to be your hard costs, your contingency, your title updates, your draw inspections, consultant fees, whatever it happens to be. All has to fall under that 50% mark. Generally speaking, that's a pretty generous cap. So you don't really run into too many issues where you're going to exceed that. So eligible properties. Now, the only one that's a little bit of an oddball in this one, this is the multi-unit. Okay, we do allow multi-unit homes to be done under the home style program. But even though this is an investment product and investors are allowed to use this product, in a multi-unit, you still need to have an owner-occupied primary residence. It's just a little weird caveat to home style. The only true investment product you could do would be a single unit. Okay, that would not be required to be owner-occupied, but a multi-unit would be. Okay, you do still have to have an owner-occupied unit. Townhomes are fine, PUDs are fine, condos, again, interior only. Modulars, perfectly fine there. Primary residences, second homes are fine, investment properties. We are currently not allowing manufactured homes, but that may change here in a very, very near future. And then can I say the 50% once more? Got a little lost. Okay, actually, if you take what the future value of the home is going to be, Toby. So, let's say you've got a home that's $200,000. You're planning to do, you're thinking maybe $50,000 worth of work, might be worth $275,000, $300,000. For rounding's sake, we'll call it $300,000. Well, if the final value of the home after the repairs is going to be $300,000, then the project can't exceed $150,000. Okay, so whatever the final value of that home will be, half of that is your project cap. So it's a little bit of a back and forth because you're not really going to know what your project is or know what your future value is till you understand what you're doing, but you're not going to know how much you can do until you figure out what the future value is going to be. So it's a little bit of back and forth. But basically what you would typically do is that the borrower would meet with the contractor, they would flesh out what they want to do, then we get the appraisal done on that and see how it comes in, just to make sure that everything is pretty good. Like I said, this doesn't bite you too often unless you're taking a very, very low value property and doing a lot of work to it. That's really the only time it'll come up to bite you. But other than that, it's pretty open-ended. It's a pretty high cap usually. Excuse me. So eligible borrowers, again, this is going to look very similar to 203K. Current homeowners are fine, move-up buyers. Of course, now we add investors into the mix. Again, this is not a low-income program, no max income limit there. One quick note about the investor thing, though. There is also a change in the amount of mortgages you can hold. Okay, so Fannie allows you to normally hold 9 mortgages you can apply for your 10th. You can hold 10 total as an investor. Now, if you're doing the home style product, that number is reduced from 10 to 4. So it is a huge deal if you've got an investor looking at this product to know how many mortgages they have. Does not matter if they have 1,000 investment properties, as long as they hold less than 3 mortgages, or 3 or less mortgages. Okay, so again, you need to know how many they've got, how many mortgages they hold, because that number does get reduced dramatically. So they can hold 3 and do a home style as their 4th, or if standard purchases, you'd be a max of 10. So just something to keep in mind. So a couple things we need to know here on the contractor side, what their requirements are, how many bids do we need, what do we do with multiples? Okay, repairs, what can be included and what is restricted, and that's where we're going to start. So renovations, this is actually pretty easy to figure out. There's really only 2 criteria that you need to hit. Number 1, is it permanently fixed to the property? Number 2, does it add value to the property? If the answer is yes to both of those, chances are it's an allowable repair. Now also keep in mind that permanently affixed to the property is not the same as permanently affixed to the dwelling. Okay, so that's how we're able to do the outbuildings, pools, fences, that kind of thing on home style that we can't do on 203K. 203K, you need to be contiguous. So the SR has to be contiguous to the dwelling. Home style does not. Again, you can add luxury items into here. There's no limitations on structural. Generally speaking, and people argue back and forth with me on this one, but I tend to find home style to be a little bit more lenient, a little bit easier to use, just because there's less to know. There's less to really think about in terms of, oh, is it structural or is it non-structural? Would this be considered luxury? Well, okay, then this has to go this way. There's less to worry about there. Now, given this is a conventional product, so it is a little bit harder to qualify for. Okay, minimums on the 203Ks, you're looking around 580. Minimums on these, you're looking about 620, so the qualification's a little bit higher. You're also a little bit higher on the contribution. So there is a trade-off. But again, you could use this product to do very major things. We could do a whole addition to the house, replace the roof, put another story on, but we could also do detail, paint, carpet, appliances. So, pretty wide range of things that you can do with this product. So from the contractor side of things, we need to make sure we've got their itemized plans and specs, should describe the work and the cost breakdown. Okay, very similar to a 203K, the appraiser is going to do an as-complete or future value appraisal for the home based on the specifications of repairs. Draws are going to be done after the loan is closed. Okay, there's no standard initial upfront draw for these, but again, we do have that 10% limit for certain items. Things that require high deposits, things that are gross material costs, that kind of thing, but those are done on an exception basis. There's not a standard disbursement for this. You do have sort of the same situation here that you do on a 203K limited. Okay, you can use up to 3 contractors before GC would need to be involved. So if you've only got 3 contractors, you're good to go. If you've got 4, one of them has to be designated a GC. So it's kind of a blend between the two. Again, you're able to use up to 3. Get above that, you're going to have a general contractor involved. And again, it's going to be if we're going to do the contractor acceptance, okay, if we've got multiple contractors, we need to do it on each one. A GC, don't have to. Okay, GC, we would only do them. Now again, consultant is not required on this. It's only required on standard 203K, but they are optional. Here, you can actually include it in the loan amount. On the limited 203K, you actually have to pay them outside of closing. But on this one, you can include it. So we did have a question come in at 20% of total after value is down payment, no PMI. I believe that is correct. That is the threshold, I think, for conventional. Is that if you have an 80% down, it eliminates the PMI. I would verify that just because I do not remember right off the top of my head. But I'm almost positive that is correct. So I think it was the 80% is the threshold for that one. So contractor acceptance is going to be the same, basically. Bids, license, liability insurance, resume, W-9, permit certification. But there is one thing on there that is missing, and that is the identity of interest. Okay, so identity of interest is allowed under home style. It just has to be disclosed. Now, with that being said, we still don't allow for owner GC, self-help, self-builds, but you are allowed to have a familial or financial relationship with your contractor and borrower. So again, just has to be disclosed. The identity of interest does not come into play on the home style. So a few benefits here. Of course, all the properties are eligible. Owner-occupied, investor products, great. Low down, you got 5% on the owner-occupied purchase, 10% on second home, 15% for investor purchases. That goes up a little bit when you get into the refinances. I believe it's going to be 90% on the refinance side for primary. Second home goes up another 5%. Investors top out at 25%. So we do have some fixed rate and adjustable rate options. Can't remember the last time somebody took an ARM, but we do have them. We do allow all the standard property types, single family, condo, modular, and manufacturer is a no currently. That may change here very shortly. And then it is all subject to standard mortgage insurance. So this is really in here just to show you kind of a nice picture of what a home style can do. This is the same house, believe it or not. Okay, we have an older kitchen here. I think this was probably early 80s, maybe mid 80s on the kitchen. Not great in the counter space, not great on the cabinet. So what they did is they actually gutted it and put on an extension to the back of the home. Put on a nice gable roof, pendant lighting, granite countertops, hardwood floors. This was a major one, but you can see the results were gorgeous. So this gives you an idea of the scope of the work that you can do with some of these, whether it's home style or 203K. So I did tell you that I was going to show you a nice little marketing slide here. So this slide right here we found to be fairly powerful with realtors. And then Toby, the fees for them actually there really aren't many. I'm gonna send you out a guide that has the fees in it, but really there's only a couple that you have to worry about. One is the supplemental origination, which is calculated on the Max Mortgage worksheet. The other is the title updates and inspections. Okay, but you're going to have a reference for that. I will send you the fees and such to go with it. That's really the only ones you have to worry about. There really isn't anything else above and beyond. So just so you know. So the reason this is in here, this particular slide, is most realtors either A, don't know about the home style product, or B, don't understand the home style product, so they don't offer it. This is a great opportunity for you guys to get in with realtors and explain how this product can be a huge win for everybody involved. So let's go over how to explain this real quick. So what you're looking at here is a regular listing versus a home style. It's the same house, okay, under different conditions. So we're going to take the regular listing at sale, 220. You'd probably have to reduce it to about 195 for the condition. Okay, we're going to assume this is a little rough. Okay, you're probably talking C4, C5, beat up, needs some deferred maintenance, needs a little repair, needs some love. So they would have to discount it normally, and discount it about 195. It's going to leave you 4,500 in concessions. 11,700 goes to the realtor, and the net to seller is 178,800. But you take that same home and then look at it with home style. Okay, same list price, but now you don't have to reduce it quite as much because you know that at the end of this process, the borrowers are going to have a nice renovation fund. So you really don't have to reduce it as much. That's going to leave you more cap on the concession, $5,400. The realtor's going to walk with another $900 there, so they go up to $12,600. And the seller of the property picks up an additional $13,200. So they've made 7.38% more. So now, just taking the regular listing and home style, okay, the realtor's made more money. The realtor's made an extra $900, and the seller of the property has made an extra $13,000. Okay, so now we go down here. Regular listing and sale. Your loan basis is $195. After contribution, $185,250. Means your down payment's around $97.50. However, at the end of this process of buying this house, the borrowers now have to pay for everything in cash. Any repairs they want to do to this house have to be done in cash. Look at the home style. Well, your loan basis is actually now $231 because we've taken this $210 sales price and we've added in our $21,000 construction budget. So your loan basis is much higher. So after the contribution, your loan amount is $219,450. The difference to the borrower is only $1,800. Okay, so they're only out an additional $1,800. However, they now get $21,000 to use in repairs. So you've made more money as originators because your loan basis is higher, or so your loan amount is higher, and the borrower now has a $21,000 construction budget. So between these two, using home style, the seller makes more money, the realtor makes more money, you make more money, and the borrower gets a $21,000 construction budget just because you did this with a home style instead of a condition discount. So this can show you how powerful this is. The customers only come out an extra $1,800 and they get $21,000 in return. So that great tool to use with realtors to kind of get them to understand how home style can benefit some of their older properties. Okay, maybe they've got some inventory that's been with them for 5 or 6 months. No realtor likes to have that. Maybe they're a little beat up. This is a great way to get rid of that stuff. Okay, so feel free to take this slide, cut it apart, You can use any parts of it and make it into your own marketing material. It's perfectly fine. But anyway, in presenting this to realtors, we actually worked with a realtor to prepare this, so this has been very, very powerful. So this will be included when I send out the training presentation. You'll have a copy of this. So just like the 203K, Homestyle Max Mortgage Worksheet and Disclosing Costs, we're going to help you go over those. We are going to provide guides for both of those. However, disclosing the costs, okay, now that TRID has been implemented, okay, we do not have the conversion chart yet for the GFE HUD into the CD and, LE and CD. We don't have that converted yet. That is something that we are working on diligently to get prepped and ready for distribution so that you guys have another disclosure guide. Because at this point, our disclosure guide is not going to make sense because it's changed now that TRID has started. So that is something that hopefully will be forthcoming that we can get loaded up and sent up on the website for you. But on the 203K, most LOS systems are going to have some version of a built-in Max Mortgage Worksheet. Now this is going to change a little bit because of 4000.1. That really will go away and it's going to be replaced by another one, but it's not ready yet. FHA did not have it prepped and ready for the start, so we're still using the old one at this point in time. That is usually built into most LOS systems, whether you're using Compass, Helix, LoanQB, Loan Manager, Mortgage Manager, whatever it happens to be. They have a version built in. Most of them do not have a version built in for Homestyle. So that's what we're going to jump to next. I'm just going to show you a quick example of what the Homestyle Loan Builder looks like. So this is actually one of the items that I'm going to send you after we finish up today. This will allow you to do your Max Mortgage Worksheet and do scenarios with Homestyle very, very, very quickly. So we're going to run through a quick example here. Let's say our purchase price was $220. We're looking to do about $50,000 worth of repairs. Are we going to hire an architect or engineer? No, we're not. Are we going to hire a consultant? Probably not. Were the utilities on? Yes. Okay, then we need a 10% contingency. How many draws? Let's see, 50,000, you're probably looking a little bit closer to 5. This will be determined really by the contractor, but we're going to estimate on the high side and go with 5. Okay, this is a purchase. This is an owner-occupied property. If the permits were not included on the bid, you can include those on here, so we're going to put that in as $1,000. It's going to calculate your loan project administration fee. Is the property going to be occupied during construction? Now, why would we ask this? Well, 203K and Homestyle both have the ability to bankroll up to 6 months of PITI for your borrower if they're going to be displaced. So if they're not able to live in the property during the renovation, then we can bankroll those months that they'll be displaced into the account, so they have no monthly payment during that time that they are displaced. Keep in mind that that has to be determined by the consultant or the contractor. You cannot have the borrower say, oh, they took out my cabinet, I can't live here anymore. No, it doesn't work that way. The consultant or the contractor has to make that determination. So if they are going to be living there, we don't really worry about it. That's what we're going to do here. If they aren't, let's say we can bankroll up to 6 months of their PITI. Again, you do have to have the value to pull that off, though. So, you know, if you're very, very tight on your value, that's not going to work. If you do have a little extra room in the appraisal, then we can certainly do that. So when everything's said and done, we're hoping this home's worth about $300,000. We're going to do a 95% LTV, and then you can put in your closing costs, prepaids, and so forth down here. So when everything is said and done, you click down here at the tab, you now have a completed 1035. You now actually have your Max Mortgage Worksheet already said and done with all your calculations figured. I love this tool. So you can see here that we're at 19.28%. This is the number that you need to watch. Make sure it stays under 50, which is based on this number here. And this is an example of what I say. You have $50,000 in hard costs, but then you've got a $5,000 contingency, your inspections, title updates, permits. So it's not just $50,000. It's actually $57,843, and that's the number that has to come in under the 50% mark. This will do a little check for you to make sure that you're good. It's going to give you your loan amount right here at $263,951 after contribution, and then down here you're going to see all the numbers that you need for your page 3 1003, your details of transaction. Okay, you can copy the numbers directly from there. So this will allow you to do very quick scenarios and run through, you know, real quick little what ifs on this particular product. So nice little powerful tool. That's going to come out afterwards. That's going to come out with the follow-up email. We did have one question. If contingency fee is not used, where does it go? Well, if the contingency fee is not used, it can be used for a couple different things. Number one, you can either apply it as a principal reduction at the end, or you can use it for additional repairs. So, let's pull this other guide here. Okay, so the contingency, once everything is said and done, you could do additional items if you want. Otherwise, it usually gets applied as a principal reduction at the end. If the contingency was established in cash from the borrower's funds, that would be the only time it could be returned in cash. Otherwise, it gets applied as a PR, or you can do additional repairs. So that's what happens to it. The other reason that contingency is in there, by the way, is for cost overruns. So, let's say you were using the Homestyle product to do well in septic. Well, you dig 10 feet down in a well and realize that you've hit solid rock, and you hadn't planned on that. So now you have to blast. Well, it's going to add money to the project. Well, if the contingency is available, we can tap that. If it's not, it's a cash out-of-pocket situation, which we don't want anyone to run into. So that's the one reason. The other reason it's in there is for any borrower-initiated change orders. Again, kind of what you're saying is if it's not used for the cost overruns, what can you do with it after that? You can apply it as principal reduction, or you can use it for additional stuff. Could they use it left on window treatments, etc.? No, it couldn't be used for anything. It would have to be used for items that do add value. Again, they still have to hit those two criteria. Window treatments usually aren't permanently attached and add value. Furniture, kind of same thing. I mean, you could do it like maybe you could upgrade your appliances though. You could do that. You could do, interior paint. You could do, trim, crown molding, chair rail, that kind of stuff. That's all permanently attached. So there's a lot of stuff you could do, but it couldn't be just anything. And window treatments, I think, would fall under that. So the last thing that I'm showing you here on the screen, this is the Renovation Product Reference Guide. So what this is a side-by-side comparison between 203K Limited, Standard, and Homestyle. So if you ever have a question, okay, what's my max number of contractors? Well, let's take a look. Okay, 203K Limited is 4. I have to have 1 GC on a Standard, and I can have 3 on a Homestyle. Okay, cool. How long can this go? Okay, well, 203K is 6 months, 6 months. Homestyle can do 12 months. So this is really just a side-by-side comparison of all these sort of basic questions between those renovation programs. So if you're ever trying to decide which renovation program to go with, you can always ask us, but you can certainly use this sheet as well. It just gives you some of the side-by-side comparisons to what you can and can't do. So folks, that is the end of the training presentation for today. Like I said, I am going to send out all the information afterwards. So everything that you've seen, we've talked about, any paperwork that we've talked about, you are going to get a copy of that after we finish up today. Please make sure, if you do not have your GoToMeeting profile filled out with your email address, that you send that to me now. Send it to me in a private message. That way I can go ahead and add you to the distribution at the end. I don't want you to miss out on all the forms and stuff. So if anybody has any questions, certainly take them at this time. If you don't, then I just want to say thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope you pulled a little bit out of this today. Of course, you can always get in touch with us if you have any questions about the product. Once I send out the follow-up email, you'll have all of our contact information, my contact information, and everything you need for my team. So again, if you don't have any questions, thank you very much. We look forward to your first submissions. If you do have some questions, I'm going to hang on here and go ahead and address those as they come up. But otherwise, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.